Sheriff Stanforth, Superintendent Quinlan, law enforcement and family, thank you for joining us to lionize 9 more Ohio peace officers who have died in the line of duty, and to all of the officers who have gone before them. Your presence honors their lives and their legacies. Today is a day of remembrance and profound sadness. There's no need to mask our pain. We all share it. And the grief we feel for the peace officers honored here today is compounded by our shock and our grief at the tragic events in Charlotte, North Carolina, earlier this week. The thin blue line that connects our work, connects our hearts too. And for that reason, we are gathered here not only to give comfort to each other, but to receive it. And we desperately need to receive it. The passing of each Ohio peace officer remembered here today has left loved ones bereft and looking for answers. The impacts of their death will ripple through future generations as children and grandchildren, nieces and nephews mourn opportunities lost and memories that fate has denied them. It will wind through the lives of parents who will wonder what might have been as the years trudge slowly past. To all of you, I offer this thought: your loved one's life meant more, had a greater impact. It is a greater legacy than many who carried on for decades longer. Their lives sent ripples into the future, impacts that are almost all unknown to you and to me. But because they chose the life of a servant hero, one who spends his life in the benefit of others, their lives amplify good far more than many other occupations and lives. These servant heroes brought order to the chaos. They enabled them to escape the trauma of abuse or violence. By an act of patience or kindness, they gave a fragile person renewed courage or hope to straighten up and to carry on. They served as an inflection point that turned out to be the open gate of escape from the slavery of addiction, and thousands more interactions from the profound to the mundane, all in a day's work. Each life that was touched by these servant heroes ripples out into the future, compounding the good as they touch others. Every officer here has had this experience. Some random person comes up and recounts an encounter with that officer, long forgotten by the officer, that changed their life. It doesn't happen every day, but every law enforcement officer has experienced it. For every person like that who chances to meet the officer, to recognize them, who summons the courage to approach and tell the story, there are hundreds more. These servant heroes left us, left you, much too soon. But those stories of their daily work, the lives that they bettered, tell of the rich, deep legacy of their lives. It can be a source of comfort if we let it. I encourage you to take a moment to look around the grounds here. Take a moment to appreciate the bonds of love that unite us, the bonds that affirm the very stuff of our humanity, because we are all connected. We are all connected to the men we honor here today, and so let us say their names. Mark Heinel, a patrolman with the St. Henry Police Department and retired captain with the Mercer County Sheriff's Office, end of watch November 28th. 2020. Gerald Lynch, a court officer with the Mentor police officer and a retired lieutenant with the Painesville Police Department. End of watch, October 3rd, 2021. Billy Eyrig, deputy of the Franklin County Sheriff's Office. End of watch, October 28th, 2021. Anthony Cloyd, police officer with the University of Dayton Department of Public Safety. End of watch, December 9th of 2021. Matthew Mitchell, corporal, South Vienna Police Department. End of watch, December 29th of 2021. Terrence Bateman, deputy, Franklin County Sheriff's Office. End of watch, January 15th of 2022. Timothy Unwin, patrol officer of the Springfield Township Police Department. End of watch, March 31st of 2023. Marcus Ziegler, corrections deputy at the Hamilton County Sheriff's Office. End of watch, May 23rd of 2023. Joshua Hamilton, a deputy in the Preble County Sheriff's Office. End of watch, December 18th of 2023. 6 of these 9 men died of COVID-19. Cops don't get to stay home and work remotely to protect themselves from the disease. They showed up anyway. 2 were killed in car crashes. 1 died in a training exercise at the police academy. Their stories are told with more detail in the program, and please read them. They will inspire you. We also remember one who had gone before that we did not know at the time his duty was in the line of death, Assistant Chief Orion Hale of the Germantown Police Department. His heart attack and subsequent death in 1957 were just understood to be part of his line of duty. The eternal flame behind me burns in honor of these men and all 836 peace officers whose names are engraved on the black granite panels on this memorial wall. When I first came to this place, long before I was Attorney General, the names of our officers were carved into concrete panels on that wall. The oldest of the names had eroded with time, were barely legible. If family members would try to get a tracing of those names, they would have hardly been legible on the paper. There are things that ought not be forgotten with the passage of time. Debts that can never be paid in full can never be canceled. The granite panels carry the names of our fallen. They're new, recently added as part of our solemn duty and pledge to always remember. Every day, our peace officers put themselves in harm's way. The tragedy in North Carolina is only the most recent and horrible example of that. And every day, the spouses and children and parents and grandparents and siblings and friends of our officers quietly worry about their loved ones' safety and keep watch on their emotional well-being. Law enforcement sets a high standard for itself to do their work with honesty and integrity, to show dignity and respect to all that they serve, to protect the innocent against deception, the weak against oppression and intimidation, the peaceful against the violent and disorder. And when our officers hit the streets, the public's expectations are equally high. To come running whenever we call, to keep our neighborhoods and schools and houses of worship safe, to run toward the gunfire or the flames, to be infallible in split-second decisions in life or death circumstances. In moments of crisis, they're expected to be everything, from mental health professionals to social workers to marriage counselors. It's fair to ask, I think, this morning whether we who are served have reached the point where we take all this for granted. William F. Buckley Jr. once famously called Americans basket cases of ingratitude. I think what he meant is that we don't really think about the blessings that we've inherited. He said, to live without any sense of obligation to those who made possible lives as tolerable as ours is spiritually atrophying. He went on to say he was referring to our parents who suffered to raise us, our teachers who labored to teach us, to the scientists who prolonged the lives of our children when disease struck. Let's include in that list the law enforcement officers. For the nature of their work makes possible our lives, our liberty, our pursuit of happiness. Their work is the very foundation of our civilization. You know, on many occasions, I've thought what it must be like to be a cop. Throughout my life, with the various things I've done, I've had a prolonged and consistent window into what their world looks like that hardly anybody else gets to have. But make no mistake, I have never been or lived in their world. So I recognize that I can not possibly know what they deal with. And as I speak here today about their sacrifice, I do so from the outside as an observer, as someone who admires. Only those who have donned the uniform, strapped on a gun, and squared off against evil really know. But not long ago, I got a taste, a tiny taste, of the powder keg atmosphere into which our officers are routinely called. And I'm here to tell you, it left me shaken. It happened when I was trying out a new virtual reality headset that Ohio is pioneering for the training of our law enforcement officers. To take part of the training away from a video screen, out of the classroom and the lecture hall, and to try as nearly as possible to give them, during training, the view from the street. You've probably seen these headsets advertised on TV. They're popular among gamers, and they're increasingly being used in education. But these VR sets actually put you into a different place, completely immersed in it. With the VR goggles and headphones on, it's not like you're watching TV. It's closer to being a witness on the street when it all goes down, with 360 degrees of vision as you turn your head and sound coming from different directions all around you. On this particular day, I was watching a news scenario in which two deputies respond to a call from a teenager who's terrified that her dad is about to kill himself. If I looked one way, I saw a man with a knife, the dad, clearly agitated, defiant. For the corner of my eye, I could see one of the deputies with his gun drawn, slowly approaching the man, who was seated at a table covered with all sorts of papers and objects, including beer bottles. That's what we call a clue. And when I looked over my shoulder, I saw his partner, also with his gun out, approaching through another room. That man in this scenario was deeply depressed. It's revealed later on in the video, the officers did not know this as they approach, that the young man's son, as a child, had been hit and killed by a bus driver just 3 years prior. The mother, his wife, overcome with grief, died of an overdose. The man didn't care whether he or anybody else lived or died. As a training tool, the video depicted two different endings to the same scenario. One was peaceful and one was tragic. But I share this with you because it's the closest experience that I'll ever have to come to walking in a cop's shoes. When I took that headset off, I was shaking and sweating. I had tunnel vision. I hear lawyers and prosecutors talking about tunnel vision. And let me tell you, if you haven't experienced it, you do not understand how stress will change and limit your perception of what's going on around you. My eyes were misty. Looking backwards now, I realize that my reaction was something like the reaction that officers experience, secondary trauma, as part of their job description. And yet through all of this, even as I was as immersed as I was in the scenario, the rational part of my brain knew that I was not actually in danger. Try as I might, I cannot imagine how much more extreme those feelings would be if the scenario had been real and if I were the one a few feet away from the man with the knife. My heart pounding, knowing it was my call right now, this second, right now. And there's no reset button, no do-overs, no instant replay. Of course, it's not just the physical dangers, but the fact of the matter is the on-the-job demands are only some of what our officers deal with. Recent years, law enforcement has been demonized, and the badge, that symbol of public trust, has been spit upon and mocked. Officers' children have to deal with the ridicule of classmates brainwashed by social media's warped view of law enforcement. Officers who have done their duty under difficult circumstances but get called on the carpet to City Hall. Their careers destroyed by politicians blowing in the wind without the courage to stand against the tides of political public opinion. Officers who wake up to the news of fellow officers being shot like Tuesday morning, and somehow they still put on the uniform and report for duty. So, to the families of our fallen officers, and to those families still, those that are still living, to the men and women who carry on the work of law enforcement, I thank you. I salute you. Your service humbles me. I'm grateful that the people of Ohio can walk down the street and sleep soundly in their beds because of your vigilance, because you answered a higher calling. And I firmly believe that your fellow citizens are grateful too. I don't really think that we are baskets of ingratitude, but sometimes we need to be reminded. We all know, all of us, even the ones who won't admit it out loud, that in the worst moment of our worst day, you're who we're going to call. And we know you're going to show up. And in that knowledge, there is hope. Hope that the example of duty and service and sacrifice will inspire others. Hope for justice and order in the chaos. Hope that our civilization will not go the way of other great civilizations addicted to comfort and selfishness, but instead will grow and thrive and endure. Hope that everything will be okay. The writer and philosopher G.K. Chesterton once said, when it comes to life, the critical thing is whether you take things for granted or you take them with gratitude. We choose gratitude. Thank you.